All right, let's dive into the Book of Esther. I mean, you chose a good one. This story's got it all. Ancient Persia, hidden identities, royal drama, even a plot that could have wiped out an entire people.
Yeah, and what really gets me about this book, it's the only one in the whole Bible where God isn't mentioned by name.
Whoa, really? So we're talking divine intervention, but like behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Makes you think about how faith and action can kind of weave together even when it's not spelled out for you.
It's true, it's true. Like you got to read between the lines, right?
Right.
Speaking of things that aren't always what they seem, let's get to this crazy feast.
Oh yeah, King Ahasuerus' big bash.
This guy throws a party that lasts 180 days. You kidding me? 180 days. And then just for kicks, he throws another one. A week-long banquet for the whole city of Susa.
Talk about a king who knows how to party. But it wasn't all just fun and games though. Got to think about the historical context here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Ahasuerus, or Xerxes as the Greeks called him, he was probably using this crazy display of wealth to show off his power. Maybe even, scare off any rivals before he went off to fight the Greeks.
Makes sense, a power move disguised as a party. But then, boom, Queen Vashti decides she's not playing along.
Oh yeah, she throws a wrench in the works.
The king, who's probably had a little too much wine, orders her to, well, basically parade her beauty in front of his guests. And Vashti's like, nope, not gonna happen. Which is pretty wild considering defying a king back then was basically a death sentence.
Right, talk about a power move.
Exactly. So what do you think? What was going through her head?
Honestly, it's a question that's stumped scholars for centuries. Was she making a statement, taking a stand for women, or was it something else entirely? We just don't know. The text doesn't give us any clues.
Oh, that's frustrating.
It is. But what we do know is that Vashti's refusal, it had huge consequences. She's banished, the king's probably feeling a bit embarrassed, and guess what? Time to find a new queen.
Cue the dramatic music. Enter Esther. From a crazy feast to a kingdom-wide beauty pageant, seems like King Ahasuerus always knew how to make a big entrance. But with Esther, it's not just about beauty and palaces. There's a secret here. Mordecai, her cousin. The guy raising her, he tells her to hide that she's Jewish.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Huge. Why do you think he did that?
Well, the Jewish people in Persia, their history is complicated. They weren't exactly outsiders. They'd been living there for generations. But their position was always a bit shaky. Mordecai probably figured revealing Esther's Jewish identity, it could ruin her chances in the pageant.
Or worse.
Yeah, even put her in danger. So it was a gamble, choosing her safety over her heritage in that moment.
It's like walking a tightrope, trying to fit in while holding on to who you really are. So Esther becomes queen, living this double life in the Persian court. But, uh-oh, danger's lurking in the shadows. Mordecai, he overhears this plot to kill the king.
Oh man, talk about suspense.
Total nail-biter. So what does Mordecai do? He spills the beans, tells Esther, who then tells the king. Assassins caught, plot foiled. You'd think everyone would be celebrating, right? But here's the thing.
There's a catch.
Big time. Mordecai, the hero, totally overlooked. It's like the story's setting us up for something even bigger.
Yeah, like the calm before the storm,
And that storm comes in the form of Haman. This guy, the king's right-hand man, he gets promoted. Everyone's bowing down to him except, you guessed it,
Mordecai.
Mordecai refuses to bow. Now, this is where I gotta ask, was it a matter of principle or was there something more to it? What do you think?
Well, let's think about it. Bowing in ancient Persia, that was huge, a sign of respect, even submission.
God,
For Mordecai, a devout Jew, bowing to Haman, it could have felt like worshiping a false idol, especially if he saw Haman as this symbol of, arrogance and oppression.
Right.
And there's another layer to this. Some scholars believe Haman might have been connected to the Amalekites,
Who are they?
ancient enemies of the Israelites. So Mordecai's defiance, it could be rooted in this long history of conflict and oppression.
Whoa, never thought about that. That changes things.
It does. And this seemingly small act, this refusal to bow, it has massive consequences.
Oh yeah, Haman's ego is bruised. Big time. He finds out Mordecai is Jewish, and his anger, it turns into something terrifying. He wants revenge not just on Mordecai, but on all the Jews in Persia.
It's a chilling example of how prejudice, when it festers, can turn into something truly horrific.
And the scariest part is how easily Haman gets the king on board with this plan.
Right. He offers the king a fortune, 10,000 silver talents, basically a king's ransom, to fund this genocide.
It's insane. It shows how easily power can be corrupted, how greed and prejudice can blind people to the consequences of their actions.
And just like that, the king, totally under Haman's influence, he issues a decree. sealed with his own signet ring, ordering the extermination of all Jews in Persia. It's a terrifying example of how quickly hate can become law, how an entire population can become a target overnight.
It's a sobering thought, really makes you think about how fragile life can be. And now we're left with this huge question. What will Esther and Mordecai do? Can they possibly stop this terrible plan?
Well, for that, you'll have to join us for part 2 of our deep dive.
We'll see you then.
Welcome back. So last time, we left things hanging with this chilling decree, a death sentence for the Jewish people set for the 13th of Adar.
Yeah, talk about a cliffhanger.
Right. And on top of that, there's this whole issue with, the Medes and Persians, their laws. Once a law has been made, it's set in stone, literally. Like, you can't just undo it.
So how do you even fight against that? I mean, with a law like this, a death sentence, it seems impossible.
It's like trying to stop a runaway train.
Yeah.
But there was one thing, one tiny detail that could change everything.
Oh.
The king's signet ring.
Uh-huh. The one used to seal that awful decree.
The very same. Remember, after all that drama with Haman, it ends up in Mordecai's hands.
So the tool that was used to condemn them becomes their only hope.
Yeah, exactly. It gives Mordecai the authority to issue new decrees. But now the question is, how do you use a law to undo another law? Especially when those laws are supposed to be unchangeable.
Right, that's the dilemma.
Well, Mordecai, he's a smart guy. He doesn't try to revoke the original decree. Nope. Instead, he issues a counter-decree.
A counter-decree? What's that?
Basically, it's like a legal loophole. This new decree, it gives the Jews the right to defend themselves, to fight back.
Wow, so it's not just about survival anymore, it's about fighting back.
Exactly. It shifts the whole narrative from, passive victims to empowered defenders.
I like that. Empower defenders.
Right. And this whole idea, it brings up some interesting questions about, the whole ethics of violence and revenge. Is it ever okay to fight back? Is there such a thing as justified violence? The book, it doesn't really give us a clear answer.
It leaves us to wrestle with those questions ourselves.
Exactly. It's one of those things that continues to resonate today. Anyway, so the 13th of Adar arrives, the day that was supposed to be the end for the Jewish people. But instead of, waiting for the inevitable, they're ready
to fight.
Ready to fight. They've got the law on their side now. Jewish communities all across the Persian Empire, they take up arms, they stand their ground.
What a turnaround. The day that was supposed to be their last becomes their day of liberation.
Yeah, a testament to their courage and their resilience.
Yeah.
And get this, it wasn't just a symbolic victory. They actually won all across the empire.
Seriously, they beat the odds.
They beat the odds. In Susa, the capital, the fighting went on for 2 whole days.
Intense.
It was. But ultimately, they were victorious. Oh, and there's one detail that always stands out to me in this whole account. It says that after they won, the Jews, they didn't loot or take anything from their enemies.
Interesting. So they weren't driven by revenge.
Right. It shows this amazing sense of restraint. They were fighting for justice, not for personal gain or vengeance. It adds a whole other layer to their victory, don't you think?
Definitely. It's like even in the heat of battle, they held on to their values. That takes serious strength.
It does. So, with their enemies defeated, the Jewish community, they can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The threat's gone, a new chapter begins.
But the story doesn't end there, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the Book of Esther without a celebration, a joyous affirmation of life.
You're talking about Purim, right?
Purim. Not just a commemoration of their survival, but like an embodiment of their spirit,
Yeah.
A way to pass this amazing story down through the generations.
Exactly. And speaking of Purim, I've always been fascinated by all the traditions. It's such a vibrant celebration. What are some of the things that stand out to you?
Well, for one, there's the reading of the Megillah. That's the scroll with the whole Book of Esther.
I see.
It's read aloud in synagogues, usually with a lot of drama, People get into it.
Oh, that sounds fun. Like a performance?
It is. Everyone gets to relive the story. And then, of course, there's the food.
Oh, yes, the food.
Purim's all about feasting. And a lot of the foods, they have symbolic meanings, like Haman Tashin.
Haman Tashin, those triangle cookies.
Exactly. Some say they represent Haman's hat, or even his ears. It's like they're turning the symbol of their enemy into something sweet and delicious.
I love that. Taking something negative and turning it into something positive.
Right. It's about reclaiming their power.
Yeah.
And Purim's also a time for giving gifts, especially to those in need. It emphasizes the importance of caring for the vulnerable, which is a theme that runs throughout the whole story.
It's a celebration that blends joy and reflection, but also action, right? Making the world a better place.
Exactly. It's amazing how this one event, this near-death experience, it gave rise to such a rich tradition. It shows the power of storytelling, how a single narrative can shape an entire community for generations to come.
And it's a reminder that even when things are at their darkest, there's always hope. Always a chance for things to turn around.
Exactly. Even though the Book of Esther doesn't explicitly say it, it's hard not to see a guiding hand in all of this. The timing, the twists and turns, the way good ultimately triumphs over evil, it all points to something bigger, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It makes you wonder if there's for such a time as this moment waiting for each of us, you know?
That's a good question.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Book of Esther. We've covered so much ground, from lavish feasts to a plot to wipe out an entire people.
Yeah, and let's not forget that incredible celebration, Purim, a tradition that's still going strong after thousands of years.
Right. But what about us? I mean, what can we take away from all this ancient story? What does it have to say to us today?
It's funny, isn't it? This story is set in a completely different world, and yet it still resonates with us today.
Yeah.
One thing that always gets me is this whole idea of hidden identities.
Yeah, Esther hiding that she's Jewish, all that sneaking around, trying to fit in.
Makes you think, doesn't it? How many people throughout history, even today, have had to do the same thing?
It's true. Having to choose between being yourself and, well, staying safe.
Exactly. And then there's that moment when Esther decides to reveal her true identity to the king. Talk about a risky move. But that decision, it changed everything.
Yeah, it's like she went from being a pawn in this whole game to actually having some control over her own destiny.
Right. And she used that power to protect her people, to speak up for those who couldn't speak for themselves.
And that's a big takeaway, right? Silence, especially when bad things are happening, it's almost like you're agreeing with it.
Absolutely. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is speak up, even when it's scary.
It's like they say, all it takes for evil to win is for good people to do nothing.
So true. Esther could have just kept quiet, hoped for the best, but she chose to act, even though it meant putting herself in danger.
That's where the whole "for such a time as this" idea really hits home, right? Purim, it's not just about celebrating a historical event. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play.
Exactly. We may not all face life or death situations like Esther, but we all have opportunities to make a difference, to stand up for what's right.
And that doesn't always mean doing something huge.
Right. Sometimes the smallest actions can have the biggest impact. Speaking up for someone who's being bullied, volunteering in your community, simply treating others with kindness and respect, those things matter.
It's like a ripple effect, right? One small act can create a wave of change.
Exactly. It's a collective effort, a shared responsibility to make the world a little better.
I love that. So the Book of Esther, it's not just a story. It's like a call to action.
It is. It reminds us that we're not just spectators in this whole thing called life. We have choices to make, and those choices, they matter.
And while the Book of Esther may not mention God directly, you can't deny that there's this sense of, well, I don't know, a guiding hand at work.
Oh, absolutely. The timing, the way things fall into place, it's hard to explain it away as just coincidence.
It's a reminder that even when things seem hopeless, even when the odds are stacked against us, there's always a possibility of a miracle.
And that's a powerful message, especially in times like these when there's so much uncertainty and turmoil in the world. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay, hit us with it.
What, for such a time as this, moments are waiting for you? What opportunities are out there, big or small, for you to step up, to use your voice, to make a difference?
What a great question. It's something for us all to think about, for sure. And that wraps up another deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the incredible story of Esther and the enduring legacy of Purim.
It was a pleasure. Always inspiring to revisit this ancient tale and uncover its timeless wisdom.